Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Dungeons and Dragons, and all the drama around Dungeons and Dragons is hitting the mainstream. We've got the New York Times doing an article on D&D and all the changes being made to D&D and how it's not landing with fans, longtime fans very well. The controversy was amplified, of course, by Elon Musk throwing in his 2 cents in which he told Hasbro to go to hell because of the disrespect shown toward Gary Gygax and the other OGs who helped create this classic game, which has been turned into another hockey puck in the culture war, right? So let's talk about this. Fox News picked it up as well, and I got to give a hat tip to Mr. Robert J. Kuntz himself, who tagged me in on Twitter and made me aware of this article that he actually was quoted in, which I think is good to see. He is one of the few remaining original D&D designers, authors, writers, and he was there pretty much since the beginning. He saw kind of everything as it went down, and I don't think he's real happy with the misrepresentation that the media has been doing in regards to D&D, because for years we've seen lots of articles. I think PBS did one and NPR did one, and all these government funded media outlets, mouthpieces, talking about the racism and the misogyny in D&D and all of that. And they've spent several years trying to cultivate a very different audience, and we're going to talk about this because this article actually goes into it some. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, no woohoos today, but it is New Year's Eve, so happy New Year's. Hopefully you guys are spending it doing more fun things rather than listening to us, but we do appreciate it. Check out clownfishminus.com for merch. We got this Dismal Castle t-shirt. A lot of people like that. Clownfish hats. This is actually my hat right here. The embroidered tie-dye green hat. I love this hat. I wear this hat all the time. Thank you so much. You can also get bonus content over at clownfishtv.locals.com. So Fox News covered it, and they got from the New York Times. And again, a hat tip to Mr. Kuntz for sending me the link to this. Dungeons and Dragons rolls the dice with new rules about identity. The role-playing game replaced race with species and divorced several character traits from biological identity. Some longtime players are upset, as is Elon Musk. They said the game's first significant rules changes came after a decade, which became official this fall as they celebrated the 50th anniversary, and it reverberated through the Dungeons and Dragons community and beyond. They prompted praise and disdain at game tables and everywhere, along with YouTubers. Who is this? Is this us? Better not be us. It is not. It's the quartering. Okay. It was not us. Irritated social media posts from Elon Musk. Races are now species. Some character traits have been divorced from biological identity. A mountain dwarf is no longer inherently brawny and durable. No, he can be a barista with his boyfriend. A high elf no longer intelligent and dexterous by definition. And Wizards of the Coast, the Dungeons Dragons publisher owned by Hasbro, has endorsed a trend throughout role-playing games in which players are empowered to halt the proceedings if they ever feel uncomfortable. Safe word. They've encouraged players to use safe words. They've taken the classic races and turned them into something else. Anybody can be anything. And I guess that's okay, but it's not really traditional D&D, is it? And here's the thing. And I just want to remind people. Because Hasbro did not create Dungeons and Dragons. Wizards of the Coast did not create Dungeons and Dragons. They're like, it's our big 50th anniversary. It's a big update. They own the IP. They own the name Dungeons and Dragons. The game they have created, 5e onward especially, is very detached, I believe, from the original D&D created by TSR. And early on at Wizards, again, from my understanding, we had people that really respected what TSR had done. And as time went on, 5e, and again, if you like 5e, that's fantastic. Good for you. But that game had become kind of its own thing, in my opinion. I think 5e became a very different thing from, it was very detached from old school D&D. So now we have a divide. It's not just D&D anymore. It's, OSR, old school Renaissance. A lot of indie publishers are putting out rule sets that are more reminiscent of what D&D was. And I'm not saying that, games can't evolve or whatever, but, I guess it would be very similar to Monopoly suddenly becoming Clue. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like this doesn't even really resemble the original game that much. You've got game pieces and you've got a board and you've got rules. But other than that, everything else has kind of changed, right? That's my opinion. 5e to me feels like another game system entirely from original Dungeons and Dragons. It does not feel like it belongs in the same universe as TSR's Dungeons and Dragons and Forgotten Realms and Dragonlance and old school Spelljammer and Dark Sun and all that stuff. That's what I grew up playing. Anyway, what they're trying to do here is put up a signal flare to not only current players but potential future players that this game is a safe, inclusive, thoughtful, and sensitive approach to fantasy storytelling. This is not a game anymore. It's fantasy storytelling, said Ryan Lassard, a writer and frequent D&D dungeon master. The changes have exposed a rift among Dungeons & Dragons players, a group as passionate as its pursuits is esoteric, becoming part of the broader cultural debate about how to balance principles like inclusivity and accessibility with history and tradition. Just play a different game, but it doesn't have the brand recognition, does it? Robert J. Kuntz, an award-winning game designer who frequently collaborated with Gary Gygax as co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons, said he dislikes Wizards of the Coast's efforts to legislate from above rather than provide room for dungeon masters, the game's ringleaders and referees, to tailor their individual campaigns. Yeah, so you've always been welcome. You've always been welcome to play the game you want, the way you want to play it. Right? It's always your table, your rules. If you've got house rules or, certain monsters offend you, maybe it's a little, or certain religious takes offend you. It's not good for your group for whatever reason. Maybe you've got younger players or what. You've always been free. You've always been free to make changes to suit your group. But again, the difference now is that Hasbro wants to be the moral authority and tell you how to play the game and how to be more inclusive and how to be less racist, even as they do racist-y stuff. It actually sometimes make it worse. Sometimes they make it worse. They call attention to things that really weren't, most people didn't feel were racist, but whatever. So Robert says it's an unnecessary thing. It attempts to play into something that I'm not sure is even worthy of addressing, as if the word race is bad. Yeah, we're dealing with non-humans. I don't like this lineage thing. I mean, again, this is just my personal opinion, going back to AD&D, is that humans, dwarves, elves, gnomes, halflings, they're kind of related, but they're not actually related. They're very much separate races. We're not just talking different skin tones. They are separate races with separate histories, and they have different physical and mental and magical attributes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Actually, species sounds worse in a way because it's like you're almost turning them into animals or something. You know what I'm saying? It's like a zoological classification or something like that. And I think that actually sounds worse to me personally. I think it's, and the monsters are kinder, gentler monsters. The orcs are people too. The orcs have families now. It's like, fuck orcs. So, fuck them. I don't care. They're monsters. They're fodder. They always have been fodder. Like if you want to have a kind, compassionate orc in your group, because that's an interesting storytelling thing, that's whatever. You make up some rules for that, but I don't think there needs to be an official statement on it. Orcs are bad. They're not black people. If you think they're black people, you're stupid, and you're probably a bit racist yourself if that's what you see. No, they're fodder, right? To me, they're fodder. Changes to D&D, which gamers commonly called, I just call it D&D. The changes to Dungeons & Dragons, which gamers commonly call D&D, may fit into the corporate world's pursuit of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they're also part of a financial strategy for Wizards of the Coast. So they're doing damage control. Players responded tepidly to the 4th edition of D&D back in 2008, when the game was more of a punchline than a blockbuster movie premise. Well, the movie The movie did not wind up being a blockbuster, did it? It did not. The Big Bang Theory was not yet television's highest rated comedy, and the cultural phenomenon of Stranger Things, whose 1980s characters are fluent in D&D jargon, was years in the future. This is a massive... It does a massive disservice to D&D, I think. Stranger Things. I love Stranger Things. I watch with my kids. I love it. The game they're playing, the game those kids are playing, it's not what Hasbro's selling currently. It's a very different game from a very different time. Right? And it's so weird. Like, I think we got a bunch of tourists come into the hobby because they saw it on TV. They saw it on Stranger Things. It was kind of glammed up by Hollywood. We had the Hollywood celebrities playing tabletop games for a while. That was the whole thing. Will Wheaton and Matt Mercer and, whatever. And again, nothing against Matt Mercer. Will Wheaton, I think's mental, but Matt's okay. I met him before. He's all right. But like it changed the whole hobby. It was like geek chic. It wasn't the game that college nerds played, high school nerds played. It wasn't. It was like, oh, okay, now everybody wants to play this game, but they don't really know the rules. They don't want to really learn the rules. And they're a bunch of theater kids, so they just kind of like make it up as they go. And everybody's got super special powers, and everybody's got a tragic backstory. And like, hell, when I played my first character, I didn't think my character had a backstory. I'm just like a cleric. I like to fight the undead and whatever. That was my backstory. I fight the undead and whatever. The D&D audience was shrinking, said Jeremy Crawford, the game's lead rules designer. Luckily, we're saving it, guys. We're saving it. He added the game was becoming so tailored to just one way of playing that it was not feeling as inviting as we knew the game could be. Or, just hear me out. Hear me out. You could create a different game system for people that didn't actually want to play a game. They just wanted to role play, right? They didn't want to play a game with the rules. They just wanted to pretend they were. You could just create another game system because, again, I think D&D has become something completely different. Players desire greater leeway in creating their characters. Wizards of the Coast executive said in defense of the new rules. The 2024 Player's Handbook is the fastest selling publication in company history, it said, and its new guide for Dungeon Masters is already in reprints. Okay, well, maybe it is. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people I've talked to said they're not impressed with it. And it feels like D&D is sort of on the decline. Anecdotally, it just seems like there's not as much interest in it. So I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I have to look at the numbers. I have no idea. In addition to its species, each character in D&D is assigned a class such as Bard, Druid, Rogue, or Wizard. During quests, the abilities and corresponding skills of characters manifest in ways that can complement or undermine one another. They have to explain it. 20-sided die, improv. It's like a game of make-believe, but with rules that are actually make it fun. Well, yeah, it was supposed to be, let's pretend with rules and dice, but it's more than that too. We actually have rules and people don't want to use the rules anymore. And so basically this whole thing is about defending all the idiocy at Wizards. Now, remember, this is a company that, took the Red Box set, and we did a video on this just a couple days ago. We actually had the author of the Red Box come out and say that he wasn't real happy with how Wizards. I mean, he didn't really trash the new version of the game, but he did say that he wasn't real happy with how Wizards was treating the OGs and basically low key calling them racists and homophobes and misogynists every time you turn around, because when they offer a classic TSR product, they put that disclaimer on it, which is kind of, dumb, but whatever. It's whatever. Yeah. So they didn't want to choose a dwarf to make them a lesser wizard. Well, that's that. Okay. The fact that your dwarf can be a wizard. I was there before dwarves could be wizards. Dwarves used to be kind of magic averse, right? If you wanted a non-human that could cast spells, you had to play an elf. I'm just saying. Players who are frustrated by the recent revisions argue that the innate characteristics of the species gave the game part of its allure. Yeah, because you could kind of min-max stats, or you'd have to play differently based on, your race. Like you can only go so far if you're a certain race in a certain class. It did add, I think it added kind of pros and cons to choosing that character, but whatever. All the species are becoming humans with decorations. Yes, lamented David Cutler, a self-described grognard or veteran gamer who plays alongside Lassard at the Boards and Brews bar in Manchester, New Hampshire. Cutler acknowledged that the game's orcs, the malevolent dark-skinned creatures developed by Tolkien, have been associated with negative racial tropes in the real world. But he said their innate traits, however fictional, have accrued authentic meaning over the decade. They said Cutler and others gathered at a house outside Manchester for Friendsgiving, and they played a gaming session. They said they're talking about a tabaxi, a creature with the feline appearance and night vision that one would expect of a species created by the Cat Lord. He's been adopted into an elven family. He's also a sorcerer. Being a tabaxi didn't matter. Then who cares? He'd just be a fuzzy elf. This is interesting. It's from Portland. Oh my God. This is all damage control. This is what this is damage control. Dana Ebert, co-founder of the gaming center pub TPK Brewing in Portland, I'm sensing a theme here, said that she sensed a majority of D&D players were responding positively to the changes. In Portland, in a microbrew, I'm sure they are. I'm just saying. Of course. Wizards of the Coast is catching up to its competitors. Apparently, she freelanced for Pathfinder for Paizo, the role-playing game by the company that has spoken of ancestry and heritage instead of race for several years. That is Pathfinder, though. They can do whatever they want. It's numerous things. It's not just this. Why are they zeroing in on just this? And they're many, many months late, years late to the party. This has been going on for a while. And so what? Okay, so this is what I think. This is what I think is going on. Elon Musk got involved. They're doing damage control. What's the mouthpiece? The New York Times. Oh, what can we get them on? We think these people are racists. Let's make the whole article about species when it's actually numerous issues with D&D. And even outside of the game itself, the business practices of Hasbro. The OGL debacle, is that mentioned in here? I don't know if it's mentioned in here or not. Hasbro basically giving the middle finger to its fandom. People being banned from Gen Con. The Pinkertons sent to a guy's house because he got some magic cards early. Oh, no. We're going to make it all about race. So this is Jason Tondro, who worked on the 50th anniversary book. We talked about that. And, of course, they had that little preamble saying that, hey, back then everybody's racist, a bunch of white guys, basically. I don't take those critiques seriously even now. People were pissed at him. He did write the preface. He said, I consider those people not worth listening to, so I didn't anticipate their outrage. In response to the comment, Musk posted how much is Hasbro. Musk did not respond to a request for comment about Dungeons Dragons. Oh, for fuck's sake. Wizards has pressed forward in its push toward a more inclusive game. The company now suggests that extended Dungeons & Dragons campaigns begin with a session in which players discuss their expectations and list topics to avoid, which could include sexual assault or drug use. Or you could talk to your group, and if you know someone in your group has been through something incredibly traumatic, maybe you just don't include it in your game to be a decent human being. They're going to have a signal. You have to send a signal up. The crossed hands, which came from BDSM play, as I understand it. You can't just say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, or hey, can we talk in the hallway, or you know what I'm saying? Here we go back to Robert Kuntz, the designer and Gygax collaborator, said that while some topics ought to be considered off limits, it was a mistake to interfere with the implicit social contract that has sustained Dungeons & Dragons for decades. But never mind. Don't listen to this guy who actually worked with Gary Gygax. But Akshay Arora, a software engineer and avid gamer who playtested the new rules, defended the policy. You're doing something for pleasure. This isn't a place where you need to be forced to experience something you don't want to go through. That's true. But you shouldn't force or put the expectations on people that this is how a typical session is run, right? I mean, we've always been kind of, at least in my groups, we're always kind of, loose with the rules sometimes to accommodate certain people or their experience, or just to make the game a lot more fun or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It is known. It is known by the players of the game that you can bend the rules a little bit. You get to know your group very well. They become colleagues. They become friends. I still have very good friends that, we used to game together. Decades ago. We still talk all the time. And you get to know each other. And if somebody had something horrible happen to them, you're not going to put them through it in a game. It's a game, right? But this is so silly. So I love how we've literally got somebody who was there at the beginning saying, look, everybody knows this is stupid. You don't put people through traumatic experiences. It shouldn't be a hard and fast rule baked into the game. Well, a software developer who likes gaming disagrees. What the fuck? That's the problem. That the scene is overrun with people like this now. There is no respect shown to the OGs at all. Margaret Wise and Tracy Hickman, they wound up suing WotC. I don't know how that ended, but they won't part with Dragonlance. They're trying to milk Dragonlance too. Oh God, so stupid. So this is damage control. They're basically trying to be like, they are a bunch of bigots and racists. If you don't like the way the game's going, we're just trying to do it for, to make the game safer and more marketable to people. I would like to see some numbers. I really would like to see some numbers about the sales of the new player's handbook. I could be wrong, but my gut feeling on this is it might sell very well at the beginning. I don't know. Because they're saying it's the fastest selling or the best selling new release. But I'm like, as far as I know, 5e was the best selling version of D&D because it's been around for so damn long. And it was, the version that was available through Critical Role and all of that. And even Stranger Things, even though it's not actually that game. But I'd like to see some numbers. I'll have to go look into that. Maybe do a revised video here later. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Again, Happy New Year. We'll talk to you later.